Good morning. Welcome to the October 21st Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. If any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item today on the Zoning Board agenda, there are speaker request forms to the left of the dais. If you wish to do that, please fill it out and hand it to the staff seated on the left side. Fill it out with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to as well. We would also like to ask that if any member of the audience has a cell phone or other electronic device, that you either turn it off or turn the ringer to silent. If you need to take a call, please step out to the hallway so the meeting is not disrupted. The public hearing on item number 1, the approval of the September 9th, 2021 Zoning Board of Adjustment minutes, is hereby opened. All right, Rachel made a motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
And Haven seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2.
Good morning.
Morning.
We would request a continuation of item number 2 to the November 4th Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. There was a misprint in the publication of this item, so we need to correct that and then get it back on the agenda for the next meeting.
Gotcha.
I'll make a motion to continue to November 4th.
All right, Rachel made the motion to continue item number 2 to November 4th.
Second.
And Mike Gallagher seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Item number 3.
Good morning. This is item number 3, 21 VA 009. It is a variance request to allow an 85-foot high sign in lieu of a maximum allowed 45-foot high sign. This is at the Pilot Travel Center truck stop, which is located at the intersection of Interstate 90 and Deadwood Avenue. There is an existing non-conforming 84.5-foot high sign that the applicant is proposing to replace with a brand new 85-foot high sign. This is also known as the Windmill truck stop. The property is currently zoned as general commercial. And as you can see on the future land use map, Interstate 90 and Deadwood Avenue are both entrance corridors. And here's an additional map showing the streets. Deadwood Avenue is a principal arterial and Universal Drive is a minor arterial street. This is a drawing that the applicant submitted showing the existing sign and the proposed sign. So the old sign, which you see on the left side of your screen, is 84.5 feet tall, just over 84.5 feet tall, and is 313.7 square feet on each side. It consists of 3 different parts. You see the top part that says Pilot Travel Center, the middle part, which is a LED sign showing the fuel price, and then on the bottom it says Subway. They're proposing to replace that with a similar sign, except with one pole slightly taller and with an area of 418.75 square feet on each side. The applicant is proposing to replace the existing sign due to structural issues, and they submitted some photos there showing some rust on the sign. The applicant also submitted these drawings showing the existing sign along Interstate 90, as well as what a 45-foot sign would look like. Part of the reason why they're proposing this variance is that an 85-foot sign is visible above the trees, but a 45-foot sign is more difficult to see. And they also submitted this drawing showing what the new sign would look like compared to the surrounding trees. This is the site plan that the applicant submitted. The sign is located right here. The other buildings on the property include a restaurant and a convenience store. The windmill is located right here. So these are some photos that I took earlier this week. This is looking north at the sign from the truck stop. This is the base of the sign. So if we could dim the lights, please. You can see there is some rust at the bottom of the sign. Another view of the base of the sign showing some rust. And then this is looking south at the sign. This is the view that travelers heading eastbound on Interstate 90 would see. Then this is looking to the south toward the truck stop. You can see the existing buildings, including the restaurant, the convenience store and repair shop, and the windmill and the fueling canopy. This is looking east. As you can see, this is the intersection of Interstate 90 and Deadwood Avenue, and you can see the off-ramp in front right there. And then this is looking to the west towards Interstate 90. So you can see there is a break in the trees right here, but this is one of the trees, and this is one of the trees that the applicant would claim blocks the view of the proposed sign. So with that, staff is recommending denial of this variance request for a few reasons. The first is that it does not prevent reasonable use of the land. Limiting sign height to 45 feet does not prevent reasonable use of the property, and the applicant could potentially make some repairs and still maintain the existing legal nonconforming 85-foot height. Staff also have not been able to identify a special circumstance associated with this property. This could also potentially set a precedent for other businesses along Interstate 90 wanting higher signs. Another reason is that they could potentially reduce the height of the sign and still maintain the desired effect of catching attention of traveling motorists along Interstate 90 and still being visible above the trees. And finally, this is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan, which calls for maintaining views along Interstate 90. So a sign of this height would not be in conformance of that. I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you, Carl. Are there any questions for him at this point? I have
Mr.
a
Chair?
few- Yeah, Vicki.
If I could just clarify a couple things. We had a lot of back and forth discussion with the applicant about the statement of can the sign be repaired? They don't believe it can be. They believe it has to be replaced. We always include that option. Our building official has said that there have been many similar signs throughout the community that have been repaired, which would maintain that legal nonconformity. Remember, this was built in the county and then annexed in. It doesn't meet city standards. It would take an engineered design to determine what that repair needs to be, and that's something the applicant would have to provide, not us. They would need to provide that. So that's not their choice, that's not their desire, and so that's why they're here today, to seek the variance. We've brought to your attention on other variance requests for higher signage that our travelers today travel a little differently than they used to. Granted, you do look over to see where's the exit signs, where's the different uses, but many times when we're trying to get to a destination, we use our GPS systems, and so that height of signage isn't as needed as it used to be because your GPS is going to tell you where to turn, when to slow down, etc. So just based on the criteria that we are required to review in order to make a recommendation to you, this is not the minimal adjustment necessary. Even the trees and their height, as you saw with the 85-foot sign, it's well above the tree line. And so the height itself could be lowered. But with that, I just wanted to make those clarifications, and our recommendation is that we cannot support this request.
Thank you, Vicki. I have a speaker request form from the applicant, but Kelly, do you have a question for staff at this point?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vicki basically asked it. My question was, was an assessment done by a structural engineer? I didn't see an engineer stamp anywhere. There was a city engineer listed on the review, but that was my question. If an assessment was done, what were the results of that on that sign?
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
So our engineers are civil engineers, not structural engineers, and so they're looking at is this in a site triangle clearance requirement? Those types of safety elements. Does it conflict with any utilities or drainage? But it would be at the applicant's responsibility to bring in that structural design from an engineer.
Haven?
I was just wondering what the extent of repairs would be allowed so that it continues as a non-conforming use. I guess, for example, could they put the new signage on the old poles?
Mr. Chair, it's my understanding in visiting with the building official that if those poles can be maintained, that there's quite a bit of extensive replacement of the sign facing that can occur, but they would have to maintain the poles that are there. They could re-enhance them, structurally support them, but the poles could not be replaced. That then makes it a new structure.
But they could, the photos that they provided, there's going to be a little difference in the signage that goes on them. They could put the new signage on the existing two poles?
The signage could not expand in size, and that's another thing that they want is more sign face. It would have to stay within that same parameter. It would have to fit within the same footprint of the existing sign.
All right, we'll go to the speaker request. Michael Everett, if you could just identify yourself once you're up to the microphone for our records.
Good morning. My name is Michael Everett. I'm with Texas Republic Signs. There's a few problems that I have with how it's been presented to y'all. Steel has a finite life. You can't repair anchor bolts that have rusted away. At the bottom of the sign, there's anchor bolts all the way around there. Salt, whatnot, it's gotten on those and have rusted them away, and they need to be replaced. And what we do with that is we put a new pole into the ground that doesn't have anchor bolts, so you don't have that problem anymore. And if you look at one of the photos, how do you go back to that photo right there? Somebody's attempted to do a repair on that pole. That's not engineered. Somebody just went out there and started cutting and welding on it, and I'm sure the city knew nothing about that at the time that they were doing that. That's not right. We have an engineering spec that we go by that Pilot provides for us. When we go out there and make the assessment of does this sign need to be replaced, does it need to be, what's going on with it, and we send that back to them, and they look at pictures like this and say, I can't see putting new signs or any other sign on top of that. I would replace that pole at the cost, whatever it cost them to do it. So we believe at 45 foot, as you can see as we presented, the top of the sign would be barely seen due to the trees. And that's your bottom photo. Not allowing us to replace the steel that has structural issues, we would hope that the city would work with us on at least getting something there that would help it from the way it looks now, to get a structural engineer to actually look at it and tell us, if the city agrees with us, let's get that repaired, and go forward with it from there. But at this point, the city's saying we can't touch it. The entrance corridor staff refers to as being preserved currently has that 80-foot 5 sign. So, and it's visible without interference from the trees. Allowing the sign to be replaced at 85 foot would not change the visibility landscape. It would remain exactly the same. They brought up GPS. GPS is for a destination. We feel Pilot is not a destination, it's a convenience. It's something that our customers will notice when they get off, and it's a quick decision when they do. They notice the signs and they exit. I've never put Pilot Travel Center as my destination and as to where I needed to go. It's always been my end point where I wanted to be. It's pretty important to see the price sign above the trees. Pre-COVID, truck drivers were in a contract with Pilot where they didn't have a choice. They could come over, and it wasn't price driven then. They were set price. They could get their diesel and go on. It's no longer that way. They're not in contracts any longer. So it's price driven more now with COVID than it's ever been. And our visibility for the sign is more important than it's ever been. Losing the sign height and the visibility will ensure loss of revenue for Pilot and for the taxes that they pay to the city. We also feel that lowering that sign to where the trucks can't see it would be also a safety issue. If they can't see it and they do notice it at the last minute, trying to get over in time to make that exit could potentially be a safety issue for these big trucks and small vehicles. And one last thing I wanted to add is, if Pilot didn't believe that that sign was important, they wouldn't spend $200,000 on it being replaced. It's quite expensive. That's a lot of money. And if they felt that GPS was, the future and that's where it's going, I promise you they wouldn't spend that kind of money on replacing that sign or put it up as high as that is. Because it costs about, just for the pole, $2,000 a foot for them to put that pole up. So it's quite expensive. They wouldn't go to the expense. And that's, I have to say. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Okay. Thank you. Eric Ottenbacher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, as stated, this doesn't prevent reasonable use of the property, and this is legal nonconforming, meaning that we took it as is when we annexed the area, and it just so happens now that the pole is being changed, then it has to come into conforming standards. So I guess I just have a question on the trees. Who owns those trees? I mean, can one or two be knocked down and worked with the landowner in order to increase the visibility of a 45-foot sign?
If I may, some of those trees are on the Interstate 90 right-of-way, but some of them are on Pilot property.
Okay, so even Pilot could conceivably, take away some of those trees to increase visibility of the signage.
Mr. Chair,
Vicki?
the property owner could contact South Dakota Department of Transportation and visit with them about trimming or removing some of those trees. They've done it in other instances where it created safety issues. I don't know if they would deem this a safety issue or not, but it's a conversation they could have.
Right.
And again, the different angles of where those trees are, I'm not sure if all of that would be in the right-of-way or if it's on neighboring properties, but it's a discussion that the applicants could have. They would need to take the lead on that.
Right, okay. And just one more thing, and the reason why we have these ordinances is to preserve the beauty of the Black Hills and to not take away from the look of the Black Hills. And a signage like that does detract from the outside viewing of the area. So I would totally be in favor not allowing this ordinance to occur. Thank you.
May I respond to that?
I've got a few other speakers, but I'm happy to go back with you. Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at this picture, who took these two pictures that are up on the screen right now? Do you know?
The applicant provided them. I'm not
Okay.
sure who took them.
So was it taken from from a truck or, a truck, or was it taken from a car?
No, it was taken from Google Earth at that location. We measure a certain distance back from the exit, quarter mile, half mile, 1 mile, and then we take that picture, and I already have the sign's 85 foot tall. It's already there.
Sure.
So I know how high it is.
Okay. So there, as far as I remember, there are signs that say, that are on the highway that say gas next exit, or, within, so many miles. Has that changed, or does anyone know? Are those signs, do they still exist? Okay. I was hoping if there was an answer. I think, yes, no, we truly understand that, that there's that when a change like this, for the owner of the pilot, is looking at trying to make an improvement from what he's had in the past, but we also have these standards. And so I'm with Eric in this situation, but what he was saying is that there's really nothing here to help me understand this has got to happen. And I do understand the damage and the rust and the condition of that sign and that pole is not very good. I get it. But I'm not a truck driver, and I know that pilot station is there. And I can see that sign from my car when I'm driving. And I also know that this is absolutely a landmark for many of us because we call it the windmill truck stop. So that's got to be on the map somewhere. But I don't know for sure. But I do appreciate you pointing some of these issues out because it does help me think it through. Thank you.
All right, Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm kind of curious. Pilot was willing to spend close to $250,000 for this sign, but they wouldn't spend $8,000 to $10,000 to hire an engineer. I'm not an engineer. Nobody up here is an engineer, but I've been in design and construction my entire career. I know a bit about anchor bolts and structural steel, but I still would refer to a structural engineer with a stamp. To me, without that, everything else is a moot point. Nobody took the time to go get a structural engineer to find out. You can't make that determination, neither can I. Until that happens, there's no way I could consider this.
Understood. We have a report that tells us the sign needs to be taken down. We're not going to prevent that, or we're not going to present that to the city.
Can I ask why?
The city could come back later on and say, y'all have to take that sign down. It's in structural disarray, and then here we are.
But who makes that determination?
They lose that sign, which they do not want to do. It costs a lot of money for them to maintain it, number one. Number two is to be able to put a new one up there. That's what.
Sure. But can you see my perspective? If a
Understood.
customer came to me and said, my building's, I want to add an extra level to my building, can we do that? I'm not going to make that determination as a company man or as an individual. I'm going to go hire an engineer and say, okay, you tell me if this thing's structurally sound or not. I can just tell by looking at those pictures it's not as bad as everybody thinks it is. Don't let that rust deceive you. Steel is steel, and there's a lot more to it than just that doesn't look right to me. So without an engineer's report or
Absolutely.
stamp, that's the end of the deal for me for now.
Got a couple more speakers up here, but I will get back to you, Mr. Everett. Haven?
One of the issues was the precedent that this would establish, and just wondering then, this is kind of the first one entering from Rapid City from the west as you go east, then by the other exits going east. What signs? What's the height of signs there, and are there other non-conforming signs? I suppose specifically we're talking about the two truck stops at 61 and 67. I guess 67, well, they're both in Box Elder, I guess. So that might not be an issue. But are there other signs along the interstate, other businesses that are non-conforming uses?
Mr. Chair? We have not gone out and done a sign inventory, but yes, there are other signs that are legal nonconforming for other reasons as well. Not necessarily just height, but size and location. And again, primarily those are in that status because they existed when we annexed them in. We have a legal nonconforming section within our zoning ordinance that speaks directly to this issue. They are allowed to legally remain, but when they become damaged by 50% or more of the value of the structure, then we can require that they be removed. And the whole intent is they're allowed to stay until the life of that product has expired, and then we want them to go away. And we want the new signage to comply with what any new business would have to meet if they were to come in and open shop in Rapid City today.
Mike Gallagher?
Mr. Chair, my question is, I understand it's on their property, but have we looked at any other options for locating it somewhere else where it could just be 45 feet high, maybe just a little bit further west down the highway or something like that? I mean, that's one of the things I'd like to see if that's been explored or not. Thank you.
I think this is a good spot to go back to you, Mr. Everett. Maybe if you could start with Mike's question, just on location on Pilot's property.
What appears to us, the trees block anywhere that you put it along, unless I put it in the middle of the parking lot where the trucks park. That's not a, I don't think Pilot would go for that. And at 45 foot, I don't believe they'd be able to see it anyway.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
I don't believe that there's a point in rise of elevation on that property that would gain him some benefit because your grade elevation is higher at one point versus another, which speaks to the overall height. It's probably in the most optimum location now than any other site they could potentially pick and not interfere with circulation on site.
I guess my question is further, is there opportunity, maybe even off their property, for somebody else to come up there and put a sign somewhere along there? Or, there is, back. I'm fairly familiar with that site there too, and I'm wondering if, like on the west side of their parking lot, if there's an opportunity for a 45-foot high sign there as well. If you go back a couple pictures, see. Oh, stop right there. Kind of, yeah, I guess that's their, if the yellow is their property, that's, my question would have been, I've been on the other side of their parking lot between them and that other workshop there, but, or perhaps even at the end of their property, right up there by the point, right next to the very farthermost extent of their property line up there. That would get them away from the trees, and it would get them away from, you even put them closer to the highway. I think that would be an opportunity as well. Thank you.
Office setback.
Setbacks might be a concern in that location as well.
They're only 10 feet when they're this high, so setbacks shouldn't be an issue.
Rachel?
I mean, I think we can try to get creative on behalf of the applicants and try to think things through for them, but I don't think that's really our, as much as we want to be helpful. I think at the end of the day, we have set criteria that we have to meet in order to say, yes, that we support this. And I just don't see that it does, that meet any sort of criteria that says this is special conditions or, reasonable use of the lands is prevented if we don't say yes or, anything like that. So based on that, I'm going to make a motion to deny the application.
Second.
All right, Rachel made the motion to deny item number 3, and Vince seconded that motion.
Mr. Chair?
I want to go back to Mr. Everett. as well. I promised him another chance to speak. Vicky?
If we could get the motion maker to include the criteria for the motion, and I believe what I heard is that it doesn't deny the applicant reasonable use, there are no special circumstances pertaining to this property, and that this is not the minimal adjustment necessary. If those could be added to your motion.
Yes, thank you, Vicki. I'll include those, Mr. Chair. And I would also like to add that I think preserving the skyline or bringing the skyline closer back to what we would like to see it as, you know, as part of, it is part of my motion as well.
Okay, that works for the motion maker in the second. Mr. Everett?
I don't think there's really any reason to speak any longer on it. It's been determined. I mean, we can't even compromise the height. 85, we go to 75, 65. So they
You
can
know,
see.
unfortunately, once we have an application, it's really hard to change the terms of that application. You know, there's an opportunity to continue or to, I mean, we just, as a board, really try not to re-engineer an application from the dais because we're not engineers or designers.
Mr. Chair,
Vicki?
you can grant less of a variance than requested, but I think that you need to ask yourselves, will that make a difference based on the reasons for why you're recommending that this be denied regardless of the height, if it is just anything over 45 feet. But certainly, if the applicant wanted this to be continued to come back with a different proposal, it would save him having to make a new application and sending out letters again.
Yeah, and I guess I only speak for myself, but without seeing a developed plan with, you know, pictures of a different sign, height, whatever else, I just can't act on it. Rachel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think when we go back to the criteria, it's not really that an 85-foot one wouldn't meet criteria, but a 75-foot one would. It's just simply that I don't see a variance changing the sign height meets criteria. And so 46 feet probably wouldn't either, because I just don't see, you know, that the criteria to approve it would be met. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Vince, you had a comment? Okay. All right, any other comments on the motion to deny that's on the floor currently? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. That is our last item on Zoning Board of Adjustment this morning. I'd look for a motion to adjourn from ZBA so we can go over to Planning Commission. All right, Vince made the motion and Rachel seconded that motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we're adjourned. And now we'll commence the Rapid City Planning Commission meeting for October 21st, 2021. Again, if any member of the audience has an item on the Planning Commission agenda that they wish to speak to, please fill out a speaker request form and hand it to the staff seated along the left wall. And if you still have your cell phone on, turn it off, turn the ringer to silent. Items 1 through 5 have been placed on the consent calendar today and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of the planning commission are recommendations to the city council. The city council will make the final decision. Are there any items 1 through 5 that staff would like removed? And any items 1 through 5 that any planning commissioner would like removed? And are there any items 1 through 5 that any audience member would like removed for separate consideration? All right, the chair would then entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar items 1 through 5 in accordance with staff's recommendation. All right, Vince made the motion and Eric Ottenbacher seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is item number 6, 21 UR 019, a major amendment to a conditional use permit to expand on-sale liquor in conjunction with a golf course. You may recall that at our last Planning Commission meeting, I presented this item, and you voted to continue it to allow staff to research when operation, when operation of a beverage cart began on the property. After some research, it was determined that it began in 2002, after 1993. So your action is required. So a vote of approval would bring the cart into conformance.
All right. Any questions on this item remaining, or? Eric? I'm sorry, your mic.
In looking at this, with the cart going around, I assume is kind of traveling from hole to hole, or just kind of randomly, just kind of driving along. It's one thing in an establishment like a casino or the nail bar or whatever, that you can sequester, liquor access to a particular area of that building. But in this case, when you have minors out on the golf course as well, that makes control of liquor a little bit more accessible, and that kind of bothers me a little bit.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
That is a wonderful comment, Eric. I think that if you look at this similar to how we would a restaurant or an arcade where you have children of all ages enjoying those activities, obviously they don't serve to minors either. And so even if the parent sitting on their golf cart chooses to purchase a beverage, their minor child that's with them obviously would not be allowed to purchase one. And we come up against that in so many activities, and it really does seem to play out that people do play by the rules. This is in a public environment. If a parent chooses to let a child have a drink at home, that's one thing, but in public it's another. And so we didn't feel that that was going to be an issue. If you had a couple 17-year-olds out golfing, obviously they would not be sold a beverage. And the representatives from the City Park and Rec is here, and I would assume that they need to have ID on them if they're going to be purchasing it. Maybe Christy could speak to that.
Christy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Christy Lentz, Meadowbrook Golf Course Operations Manager. That is a wonderful concern. That is actually one of the items that made us want to bring this proposal forward with the contractor that we have at Marco's Pizza. It's their staff and it's their license that's on our property. And from a management perspective, it's a benefit to us to have it be our city staff and our city enforcement as part of that, making sure that we are getting IDs, and if there are issues on the course, that our staff act. So that is one reason why we did want to bring this forward and take that responsibility on.
I do have one other question, if I could, Mr. Chair. And you brought up the point of the city staff is going to oversee this, but there was also a letter or a document in there that said that you'd be working with the partner Marco's as to control of the liquor. It seemed like there was some indecisiveness on who ultimately down the road would be controlling the liquor.
So, if I may, Mr. Chairman, currently Platinum is the contractor that's in the establishment. They have the license. It's their responsibility to provide this beverage cart service. It is our intent to take that over on course where there's a little gray areas, they will remain within the clubhouse.
Okay.
So as far as us working with them, we'll make sure that we have a little seamless business as far as the types of beverages we provide are similar. The license that's before you is a beer and wine and cider. So it is not hard liquor. It's exactly the same as what they have currently. And that's kind of what we're saying. We'll work with them regarding that contract and regarding the continuity between the two businesses. But we would like it to be our business on course, our staff supervising, marshaling the course, making sure that nobody's getting out of hand and those types of things.
And how would you enforce items or people getting out of hand if they were?
Well, currently, if there is an issue, the beverage cart provider has to come to our clubhouse, and then we send a marshal out. It is our enforcement to remove them from the property if we need the aid of PD or if they go on their own. We have had instances like that. We have had certain groups that have come on and partook a little too early and had issues. If it is a tournament type of situation, we work with the tournament organizer to make sure that those enforcements are there. But that part of it has always been our responsibility. We think that it would be a better gauge and a better way for us to manage those situations if we can kind of help prevent them and have it be on the early end of those types of scenarios.
Thank you.
Haven?
Yes, so I understand then, this is not under Marco's license, so the city then would obtain a beer and wine license for the beverage cart?
Correct. We have currently applied for a beer and wine and a wine and cider license, and that is why the conditional use permit is in front of you today.
So it's separate from Marco's, it would be a separate license?
Correct.
All right, any other questions for Christy or staff on this one? Comments? All right, Mike Gallagher made the motion to approve item number 6 with stipulations, and Rachel seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries with Eric Ottenbacher opposing. Item number 7.
Thank you, Chair. This is item number 7, 21 PD 034, a major amendment to a planned development to reduce the rear yard setback from 5 to 2 feet and to reduce the side yard from 8 to 2.5 feet and allow a 7-foot retaining wall. More specifically, this property is located within a PD that was approved in the 1970s. It's one of the first PDs that was approved, and it's the first file in our file cabinet under PDs. More specifically, the applicant here is proposing to add a retaining wall in their backyard that would go around the rear property line and then put a deck on top of it. The property is 3,079 square feet in size, is 34 feet wide, and slopes down towards the north. There's a ravine in back, so there's a considerable slope there. The zoning of the property is low-density residential 1 within a planned development. Future land use is low-density neighborhood. The property is located on Parkwood Road, which is a private street. This is the site plan that the applicant has submitted. So the townhouse where the applicant lives is part of a structure where there are 3 townhouses connected with a common wall. So the property line right here is a common wall. The applicant is proposing to put this 7-foot retaining wall in back and put a deck on top of it. This right here is a drawing showing the design of the deck with the staircase coming down from the house And here's an additional drawing showing more specifically that staircase coming down from the house. The applicant also submitted some photos showing that there are existing retaining walls within the neighborhood and that this is in keeping with the character and style of that area. And then here's some photos that I took when I visited the property earlier this week. This is looking to the north at the property. This is from Parkwood Road. Then this is looking down towards the backyard. This is also looking north. This is looking south back towards the front yard. So as you can see, it is quite steep. And then this is looking at the rear side of the house. This is looking at the backyard. You can see the two pink flags right there. There's one right here and one right here, showing where the property boundaries are, so you can see just how small this backyard is and just how steep it is, showing how the retaining wall is necessary in order to use the backyard. And then this is looking at the neighborhood. This is looking to the south, to the east, and to the west from the front of the property. So staff is recommending approval of this request with the stipulations as noted in the staff report. If you have any questions, I'm here, as well as the applicant. He's here if you have any questions.
Thanks, Carl. Questions from the commission, comments? I'll jump in then. So the common area that these two setbacks back up against, it's owned by the HOA?
Correct.
Essentially, and it doesn't appear to be necessarily maintained, it's more...
It's a wooded area.
Wooded?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Kelly? Okay. Other comments or questions on this one? Motion? Oh, I have a speaker request. I forgot. Gary, would you like to come up and speak? I almost went by you. If you could, just identify yourself.
Yes, my name is Gary Dow, and I'm the property owner, and also I'm the one that submitted the request. And thank you to Carl. Been very helpful. This is the first time I've ever gone through this practice or this process. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and the board for considering this change. It's not a big piece of property, and I just wanted to be respectful of all the rules in the city, and this is a new experience for me once again. But I think it's going to be a major improvement, certainly for my property. I've followed all the requests. There is an engineer's design for the retaining wall too, and that's a stamped engineer's design. But I just wanted to have the opportunity to thank you for consideration. Thank Carl for all his hard work, and once again, this first process has been a rewarding one for me because I learned an awful lot, and I just wanted to do the right thing. Thanks so much.
Appreciate it. Eric Odenbacher?
Yes, as far as we know, is there any drainage issue associated with this, these changes, or do any kind of studies need to be taken before this is allowed to progress?
Todd?
We don't believe there's any drainage concerns. There's no drainage easements on the property, and that ravine is quite a bit lower, and the drainage area upstream is not very large, so we don't think there's much of an issue. We will see it at building permit and see more information, but we don't anticipate any issues.
Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but have you owned the property since '72?
Oh, no, sir.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
Years ago, and when I initially came down to...
If you're going to speak longer, we have to ask you to do it from the microphone. Sorry.
No, I bought the property 4 years ago, and it was actually going to be somewhat of an interim place to live, and my children are growing pretty quickly. And during this time in the spring, we went to, explore looking at building a home or looking at buying another home, and just considering what's happening right now in our community, we thought we could invest, and there's not much to work with. But when I came down to meet Carl, we did open up that file rather dusty one from the 70s. And, when you, in my terms of amending things, there should have been something to amend, but I understand that back then there were certainly different rules and regulations. So taking it step by step, and just want to do the right thing, and of course apply for all the permits. That's why I had an engineer design the wall, and went through an awful lot before we actually came to the board to even explore the amendment. So thank you for your question, but I didn't live here then. Sorry.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Kelly?
Thank you. I guess this is an internal question. During the permit process, pulling a permit, is an engineer's report required for the retaining wall and/or the structure? Or is that just an option for the homeowner? I mean, that's a tricky grade. That's some engineering there. Is it a requirement to pull a permit for something like this?
Todd?
Yeah, any wall that's over 4 feet requires a building permit and the design done by an engineer.
Under any circumstances? Okay. What about the structural?
4 feet is the threshold. If it's less than 4 feet, it doesn't have to be engineered.
Okay. And as far as the decking and the timbers and the structural, does that have to have an engineer's report to, or no?
Just a retaining wall.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
All right. Other questions, comments on this item? All right. Mike Gallagher made the motion to approve item number 7 with the stipulations as noted, and Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8.
Thank you. This is item number 8, 21 PD 035, a major amendment to a planned development overlay to allow an on-sale liquor expansion in conjunction with a casino. So there was a original PD approved on this property in February 2015 that allowed a strip mall with a casino with on-sale and mini storage. So you see the building right here on the western side of the property, that's the strip mall. The existing casino is in this suite right here, and then these 3 buildings right here are mini storage. The property is currently zoned as general commercial. There are no nearby residences. You do see kitty corner across Campbell right here, an area zoned flood hazard. That is the fairgrounds, so there is on sale there for special events, but staff is not anticipating any excess density of on sale liquor in this area. Future land use is mixed use commercial, and this property is located on Campbell, just south of the intersection with Omaha. This is the site plan that the applicant has submitted. The applicant obtained an additional video lottery license, and he's proposing to expand from this suite into an additional suite just to the north. He's proposing to add 10 new machines. The casino will operate from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Monday to Saturday, and from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Sundays. There will be no new structures constructed, no new signs, and no new employees as part of this development. This is looking at the existing casino and the proposed suite, the existing casino right here, and the proposed expansion right here. This is looking at the entire strip mall. This is looking towards the west from Campbell Street. This is looking to the north. There is a existing LED sign on the property. This is looking north on Campbell. This is looking to the northwest off Center Street, showing the existing mini storage buildings. This is looking to the east on Center Street and to the west on Center Street, to the south, and then this is looking north on Campbell, south on Campbell, and west on Campbell. And with that, staff is recommending approval of this request with the stipulations as noted in the staff report. I'm available if you have any questions, and the applicant is in the audience as well.
Thanks, Carl. Haven?
I think I understand that the current license for food or the liquor license covers the one suite. and this application would just expand that into the adjoining suite, so it really would be no change other than the expansion of the area in which they can serve alcohol.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
Haven, that's absolutely right. This applicant did receive one of the video lottery licenses that the City Council recently awarded by lottery. Actually, he received more than one, but this is one of the locations that he's going to sit that new license at, and it allows him then to expand this existing casino and add additional machines.
All right, any other comments or questions on item number 8?
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
From a land use perspective, this is something that we really encourage. You may recall several years ago, it seemed like there was a feeling like we had a casino on every corner, but they were small. The revenue wasn't there based on the limitation of the size and the number of machines. So those that have forged through and learned how to be successful in this business have learned to combine those licenses, get enough machines at one location, which limits the amount of staff that you have to have, which also limits the number of areas within our city for this use. And this is something that we promote and would prefer to see happen more, is larger casinos in less locations.
And if I can just follow up, the limitation on is there's only a certain number of machines allowed per license, essentially?
I'll defer to the applicant, but Steve, is it 10? 10.
Okay. Gotcha. All right, a motion, if there's no other comments? All right, Eric Ottenbacher made the motion to approve with staff's recommendation. And Vince seconded that motion. Any comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And that's the end of our regular agenda today. Any staff items today, Vicki?
I don't know if I had ever introduced Chip Primus to the Planning Commission. He is working with Tim Billings, and it seems like Tim's showing up at less and less of these meetings, and Chip's taking charge. So if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, maybe Chip could just introduce himself and tell you a little bit about where he's from.
Chip?
Thanks, Vicki, and for putting me on the spot, too.
Anytime.
I came from Watertown. I worked at the fire department there, fire prevention, for 19 years, and I had the opportunity to move out here, and it's an amazing place, and you guys do a great job, very professional, and I'd like to give the board a hand for how you guys proceed through. You're very well educated on the subjects, and it's all great out here. Thank you.
All right. Well, we're glad to have you. You're going to have a meeting like Todd had today where we got questions, so just be ready. Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Got some questions. Actually, when I look at this, this issue, I think of one thing, and I think of, we could be very polite at times, and I don't mean here, I mean out on the streets when we're driving. And the reason why I brought this up, several people of my friends have mentioned to me the zipper. And the reason why I'm saying that is because with the construction, most of us know the town so well. We know where those intersections and that street work is taking place. And we tend to pull over already. And then there's that one person that didn't realize it, and they go all the way to the front of the line without, and of course they have to merge eventually. Is there any attempt for the city to start a zipper campaign for these projects to explain what zipper is and how people should merge in these construction zones?
Todd, we're putting you back on today.
Frankly, I don't believe so. Most drivers know the etiquette, I guess, on the road during construction zones. There has been discussion about actual signs with the project to warn them. And like I don't know if you're talking about the GAP, Main St. Joe project, that's been an ongoing issue because of the lane closures of both Omaha and St. Joe. But yeah, normally we don't have that type of traffic issue, but I mean, the option that we have is there's 3 lanes and actually more of a yield situation where all 3 lanes pull up to the closure and then kind of merge together all at once. So it's not one long line backing up, and then you get that person that goes up to the front, and now they got to cut everyone off if that's. But no, we don't have a campaign to educate drivers at this point. It probably is not a bad idea, though.
No, it's not. You know, and it would be a simple campaign. Obviously, a sign would help explaining what a zipper is, and so that folks know that it's okay. You don't have to stand in this 2-mile or stay in this 2-mile line.
Yep.
You could stay, and you have to let that other person merge in, and you go 1, 1, 1, and 1, and 1. I mean, it's interesting because out at, you know, I've been on a few military bases in my lifetime, and that works wonderful. Most people know that, but then most people in the military come from all over. They're not in just one location. That's where I came up with, I think we're just trying to be polite. We already know that we're going to have to get over in this lane, and so we tend to get over there too soon. But a zipper campaign would definitely help.
Yep.
Rachel?
I've thought about this. I don't, I've helped with a little bit of temporary traffic control design, just like a tiny bit. I'm certainly not an expert. I think there are experts in the room here, and I'm not one of them. But I've definitely thought about this because I live on the west side, and no matter what school I'm dropping my kids off of, you know, at, no matter how I want to get across, I still have to go through construction. I mean, not now, thankfully, you know, I think last week is when it ended, but so it was especially frustrating to see that people would block the second lane to get past the left turn lane, and so you couldn't even, because I am that jerk who goes to the front, you couldn't even go, you know, all the way to the front. You still had to get blocked at that intersection, and it was so frustrating every morning. And then to have to, you know, go to the front, like, I'm not trying to cut in line. I'm just simply trying to use the storage space as it's designed, because you're supposed to be storing in those empty lanes and not, you know, blocking intersections. But one thing that I thought about is maybe if the city could include flaggers, and this seems a little excessive, but maybe for a couple projects we could train people by including flaggers where you had one where everybody wants to merge immediately and tell them to actually go, no, you have to go in those other lanes. And then you would have another person where you're supposed to zipper. And no, you go, you go, you go. So that's kind of what I thought of. There's probably some safety issues there that need to be addressed, but it was just one thought I had.
All right, any other planning commission items today? If not, I'd look for a motion to adjourn. All right, Vince made the motion. Looks like Haven seconded the motion. I saw him doing that over there. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye.